You need to speak to the supervisor. So about 20 years ago I was the supervisor of a small group 3 including me. My two subordinates, let's call them Linda and Bob, spent their days answering phone calls for the company. These two were awesome. Their call averages were under 3 minutes and it was constant calls. They almost never received complaints or had to escalate the call to me as the supervisor. I'm talking maybe a couple of times in a year. We were in a large city and they both took transit to work. They got off work near the start of rush hour. This is important because missing the early bus could mean an easy hour delay in getting home. Our phones were controlled by computer and at quitting time they would play a message that we were closed but any calls in the queue had to be answered. Since I was there for an hour past closing, I would have them log out and I would take the calls. It was a small thing I could do to help them. The problem, my manager was reviewing the call logs and noticed the pattern. He demanded an immediate end to the practice. So, for a week I had my two wonderful employees routinely stuck answering calls past closing and missing their buses. Then my brilliant wife said something that gave me an idea. The solution. On Monday morning before work I spoke to Linda and Bob and mentioned that if there were any late calls that needed a supervisor, to remember that I worked an hour later than and not to worry if they needed transfer calls. Linda caught my meaning. I think she had to explain it to Bob. It was amazing how many calls needed a supervisor at closing. Of course the report showed they answered the calls but they didn't record transferred calls. Best of all, no more missed buses. We did this for almost 5 years until I moved to a new position. Both Linda and Bob are retired now but we still laugh about this. To my knowledge my manager never knew what we did.